Coming up on show 797, well, that's a turn up for the books. The first Alfa Romeo electric SUV appears to be on the cards. Stick around and I'll tell you more. Plus on the show today, Porsche's chairman says he's optimistic about coming out of the virus with good sales for the Taycan. Electric bikes could genuinely replace your car. BYD entering a new passenger car market. And Tesla starts digging in Berlin. Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you're listening in the world. Welcome to EV News Daily. Here's what happened on Tuesday, 2nd of June. My name is Martyn Lee, and I go through every EV story, so you don't have to. If you can hear the birds tweeting in the background today, it's because the windows and doors are open, which I guess you would normally associate with it being a nice sunny day, people opening up the windows and doors, but the studio at the bottom of my garden where I work gets so stinking hot during the day. We've had about a week or two, maybe more than a couple of weeks, of unseasonably hot weather. Just clear blue skies and sunny, and that never happens here, not for a long period of time, but this office has been baking, so normally doors and windows closed, a little bit of air conditioning on during the day when the electricity's a little bit cheaper, but today it's lovely, it's cloudy, it's overcast, there's even some drizzle in the air. It's nice. So that for that reason, you may get some background noise today. We'll start with the news about Porsche. Chairman of the executive board of Porsche, Oliver Blume, is remaining confident that Porsche will not only weather the current economic storms, but actually come out of the current issues with more strength, according to Roadshow by CNET. Well, he said that the Porsche sales in the first quarter are only down by about 5%. He did admit the overall impact of the first half of the year will be maybe more heavy, is the phrase he used. However, he said that there are definitely signs of light, and I quote, "We're looking optimistically towards the future, and the response we're getting from the market, the order intakes are coming up." So it's too early to predict if we'll have, at the end of the year, a 10% effect, end quote. So the Taycan does remain sold out for all of 2020 with its release in China. Again, he's optimistic. I think it was a perfect start for Porsche in the electric era. He said a strong start that appears to have done his career a few favours as well, but maybe I'll report on that on tomorrow's podcast when I pull together a few rumours that are floating around today about maybe an expanded role for him within VW. The launch of the Taycan has certainly been, smooth, you would call it that, but also impressive in terms of the car that they have made. Of course, it's not the cheapest of cars to sell, so he has got the opportunity to sell it at a higher price point than just about anybody else selling electric vehicles on the market, but it looks like he has caught the attention of his bosses. Okay, let's move on. Headline story today. One of Alfa Romeo's upcoming new SUVs will be the production version of the, would I say that Tonale? If that's Italian, Tonale, Tonale. Tonale, the compact SUV concept that debuted at Geneva last year. According to Autocar, the Alfa Romeo is going to be joined by a new compact electric SUV to get the company's sales performance back on track. It's also going to be their first ever electric production vehicle, and you've got to admit that Alfa Romeo and electric vehicles are not words you would put together at the moment. It won't be its first electrified model, though. When that SUV, the Tonale, launches in 2021, I mention it because it's going to be coming as a plug-in hybrid version. According to CarBuzz, in terms of size, the all-electric SUV that Alfa Romeo wants to make is going to be positioned below the Tonale, and have a similar proportion to something like the Audi Q2. Now, the Audi Q2 isn't sold in the US, so Alfa Romeo's compact SUV could well be too small for even the American market. We wait to see whether it's going to be placed on sale in that market. The Tonale will share the same plug-in hybrid powertrain as other things they have in the locker at Fiat Chrysler. The Jeep Compass, for instance. The electric Alfa Romeo will be the first FCA car to use the technology gained from a merger with PSA. It's expected to utilise a version of PSA's platform, which is called the eCMP. Now, that underpins electric versions of quite a few cars and vans. There's the Peugeot E208, the E2008, the Corsa E from Vauxhall/Opel, the DS3 Crossback E-Tense, which we've been talking about recently on this show with the impressive charging performance of the Peugeot E208 as it gets into the hands of people like YouTube reviewers. I've been watching those and actually really impressed with how fast it charges, at least at the beginning of the charge curve. It does taper down really quickly, but if you're going for a long journey and you're running it down to a low state of charge and then plugging it into a pretty fast charger, that's good news. Let's talk about electric bikes, because they could genuinely replace your car for many purposes because of the coronavirus pandemic. Our hunger for owning electric bikes has been increasing, so much so that many cycling outlets are actually reporting they can't get new stock quick enough. A recent survey of 20,000 motorists by the AA in the UK found that 40% of people say they're going to be driving less in the future because of coronavirus. Meanwhile, demand on the other side of the Atlantic appears similarly enthusiastic, says the website Tech Radar. Yeah, I've been looking at those US tech sites and EV blogs as well, and there's so much love for electric bikes around at the moment, and loads of additions to the e-bike marketplace. There's a funky folding bike called the Go Cycle. When I used to get the train up to London, I used to commute 5 days a week up to London. Used to see loads of Go cycles parked up in the bike racks of the trains up from the south coast into Waterloo. The Go Cycle GX is a great electric bike. There is the Ampler Kurt if you're looking for the specialised Turbo Vado. If you are looking to keep the car at home altogether and spending some big bucks, you certainly can. If you're looking to keep the costs down, though, something like a G-Tech Sport or the G-Tech e-bike. Good value starting points. I'll pop a link to Tech Radar in the show notes if you'd like to read more. And if you're one of those people who have bought an e-bike recently, get in contact. I'd love to hear from you, to hear what spec you went for, what you're using it for, occasional use, or even replacing your commute. Let's talk BYD. Build your dreams. The Chinese company BYD announcing their expansion into Europe recently. Now the Chinese company is expanding into Colombia. That's another vehicle market outside of China. So maybe at some point in the future, BYD will start selling more passenger cars in the US. Well, according to Inside EVs, looking at the specs of the Tang, which is one of the cars they're going to be selling in Colombia. A reminder, the BYD Tang is a pure electric car. It's got an 82.8 kilowatt hour battery. The D version of it, there's a couple of versions, but the D version is the one with the dual motor. It'll do 310 miles on the NEDC test cycle. So maybe think half or 2/3, depends, but nowhere near that. There would be 0 to 62 in about 4.5 seconds, depending on the version that you get. All-wheel drive, like I say, 360 kilowatt output from the two motors. Same motor front and back, by the way, on each axle, 180 kilowatt motors. So interesting that BYD continue to expand. I'm really interested in that company and how they are looking to sell their passenger cars in various different places. So Tesla has been in the news recently for more work happening at the Giga Berlin site. Now that Tesla has received approval for foundation work, it came from the Brandenburg State Office for the Environment. The work has now begun in usual Tesla tempo, says Electrive. A new drone video. Well, there's pretty much drone videos hitting YouTube every day. If you want to watch those, there's no shortage of drone videos. I imagine the only thing busier than the excavation works at Tesla are the drones in the sky around Berlin. Says Electrive, we can say that Tesla has broken ground now. There's a Twitter user who have uploaded a drone video that sees that groundworks have indeed begun. Excavators are now digging a large pit over the weekend just gone. As yet, no word from Tesla on progress, and as with the clearing, Tesla is doing all of this work, at Berlin, all on its own risk. If the entire project doesn't get its final approval, well, Tesla must remove the foundations at their own expense and return the land. It's not yet clear when the complete building application will be approved, since the hearings on the 370 objections to the project might not take place for a while. They certainly couldn't take place as planned in March because of COVID-19. And so in typical Tesla fashion, some companies might decide to wait until they get all the approvals and the final rubber stamp at the bottom of the approval process before they even hire a digger to come in. But that's not the way Tesla are doing it. They're cracking on with the works with the anticipation they're going to get it approved. because time is really not on their side if they want to be making cars by this time next year. And that would be Model Ys, a reminder. Model Ys, the first ones to come out of Giga Berlin. Moving forward, and let's talk about the falling cost of batteries and how it affects the overall cost of cars with the steady run of design improvements. Analysts are actually now projecting the price of battery-powered engines to be on par with internal combustion engines within 3 years, some analysts say. Elon Musk, though, suggests that point will come sooner. Surprise, surprise, telling the analysts recently that a battery announcement will, I quote, blow your mind, is what Elon said. According to the Washington Chronicle, even the Energy Secretary, Dan Brouillette, is hardly a foe of fossil fuels, they say. And yet even he's touting lithium-ion batteries' ability to be deployed across the US power grid. I quote, "I think we're on the verge of solving grid-scale batteries," end quote, he said in an interview earlier this month. But battery evangelists, citing the tech advances made over the last decade, maintain that the shift of the world's transportation sectors to EVs is more than possible, although it is logistically challenging. Tesla's next big announcement will take place, it's got to be soon, it must be in the next few days. Is it going to happen in Texas? Will it happen in New York? Reports the company is already able to produce a battery at cost on par with internal combustion engines. Now that gives you a couple of options. You can either reduce the price of the cars you're selling or you increase the margins. And with Tesla at 20% plus margins on their car, some people saying that that's enough. That's enough for them to make a healthy profit on their EVs. And now is the time to turn the thumb screws on those cars which they're competing against and reduce the cost. Other people saying, actually, well, Tesla's price point is doing them no harm at the moment. Demand seems to be there, and they certainly want to make as much profit as they can. So leaving the prices where they are and just making more money from each car that they sell with their brand new batteries in. I'll pop a link to Houston Chronicle in the show notes if you want to read that full article. Let's talk about somebody else talking about disruption. Been a bit of a day of disruption news. The shift to electric vehicles, and indeed all low-carbon technologies, is going to disrupt crude oil demand on a similar scale to what happened during coronavirus, says Suncor Energy's CEO. The chief exec saying yesterday to the Globe and Mail, these comments are a stark prediction in an industry that frequently downplays, the oil industry frequently downplays electrification, and you know, certainly it points to forecasts of rising global oil demand to justify their own investments in things like pipeline expansions. While Canada is the world's fourth largest oil producer, and the oil sector in Canada accounts for 10.5% of the country's GDP. The sector also faces mounting pressure from a growing number of investors, actually, who are looking at what's happening on the wider scale, looking at the macro of the energy sector, and starting to screen companies based on things like environmental and social and governance guidelines. I mean, Norway's $1 trillion well fund back in May actually blacklisted Suncor and other large oil sands producers for producing excessive greenhouse gas emissions. More and more investment is being done in low-carbon technologies. It's interesting when even a CEO of a company like Suncor saying that EVs could be very, very disruptive. I mean, the official party line from the oil industry is that they're not worried, that investment continues at a pace. But when someone as influential as that says, look, pay attention, EVs are coming, you know it's serious. And finally, we'll end with some really good news in France. France saw a plug-in electric vehicle share market of 7.5% in the month of May. Well, that was triple year on year, so May 2019 to May 2020, but, of course, you have to factor in the fact that far fewer cars were sold. It is a steadily recovering overall car market, but still it's down 50% year on year in France. While cumulative EV sales are about 9.2% year to date, says Max Holland for Clean Technica. Always like reading Max's stuff, by the way, whether it's on Twitter or Clean Technica. The Peugeot E208 is a good seller in France at the moment. Been talking about that car quite a lot, actually, last couple of days. Renault Zoe continues to sell well. Model 3, also a favourite in France. And there's an additional boost to the long-standing whatever you want to call it in your country, cash for clunkers kind of program. Owners of older polluting vehicles, so if you've got a petrol that's more than 15 years old or a diesel more than 10 years old, in France you can get a €5,000 trade-in bonus when buying a pure electric car. And so actually, that's limited to a couple of 100,000 vehicles, but it's still a great scheme. And it means that something like on a brand new Zoe, that trade-in bonus is stackable with other incentives. And so you can, if you've got an old petrol, an old diesel, you want to go EV, you can get something like €12,000 off the price of a new battery electric car with all the incentives available. Man, I'm jealous of having that much money off a brand new car. So if anyone is listening to this podcast and has had the opportunity to sort of stack those different incentives over the years, I'd love to hear from you as well and how you did it rather than just one particular scheme. All right, here we go. Question of the week, and I'll read out your answers on Sunday. Critics are saying that EVs are only for the rich. You and I know that's not true. So when it comes to affordable EVs, what do you think is affordable? What's your definition of an affordable EV? I know everyone's is going to be different, but I want to know yours. You can email me hello@evnewsdaily.com or leave a comment on the YouTube show. Well, thank you very much to 227 patrons of the podcast. Added a new premium partner yesterday. That is you, Volvo Cars of Cincinnati East. We add your name to Phil Roberts of Electric Future, Brad Crosby, Avid Technology, Brightsmith Group for Clean Tech Talent, Porsche of the Village in Cincinnati, and Audi of Cincinnati East. If you want to hear any of the previous 796 shows, by the end of this week, working week, we'll be on show 800. How did that happen? If you want to get any of the archive shows, they're online in your podcast app. They're on the blog at evnewsdaily.com. You can subscribe to the podcast in your favourite podcast apps, which means it always arrives in various places and you haven't got to download it manually. And if you want to leave a little review on Apple Podcasts, it helps grow the show, by the way. I know it's a faff, a pain, you're busy, but if you are finding yourself with 5 minutes spare sometime today, over the next couple of days, and you're in Apple Podcasts, please do leave a couple of words, a little review, your thoughts on this show, and it really helps me out. In the meantime, have a wonderful day. I'll catch you tomorrow. And remember, there's no such thing as a self-charging hybrid.